What is up, my people? My name is Steven. Today, I'm gonna continue. I would do anything for family from Plants vs. Zombies. Yes, zombies and plants. So, summary of last video: Desmond, a fire pea shooter, has literally killed one of his friends named Calamity, while the rest were very scared of Desmond. After that, Calamity was raised from the dead, which he becomes an undead, which he would actually eat things that plants shouldn't eat. Maybe Pete, Allison, Desmond, Clem, they eat like fertilizer. Now Calamity eats their own place. It's like cannibalism. All because of Desmond. Because was so mad at Calamity that she or he, I don't remember, he ripped apart Calamity's heart. Ripped Calamity's heart out of his chest, squashed it right in front, and he's as blue as plasma pea because he's so mad. So, and last episode, my prediction of this is that Calamity is gonna just like eat each other. Like Calamity will eat Desmond. So it took Allison, Desmond, so let's just get to the story. It took Allison, Desmond, Calamity, and Pete an hour of dodging the undead plants pursuers to find escape from the graveyard. They finally escaped. The group of four was started by a bean-looking hot rod chomper and terrified-looking sunflowers that came out of a nearby bush. Ali exclaimed, "Desmond! Thank Dave you're alright! I'm so sorry for ratting you out. I couldn't lie, I just couldn't." Ali was crying, and Allison interrupted. "It's fine, sweetie. Look, it's not safe for us to go home, so would it be fine if we all stayed at your mother's home for a while?" I pulled out her phone and rang her mother, Sinatra. "Hey, Mom. Allison was wondering if she could stay at your house for a while." The two talked for 5 uneasy minutes. When we finally finished, Ali said in a relieved voice, she said it was fine, that she would send for Crazy Dave to pick us up in his flying RV. Some people sighed in relief from Allison and asked, "So until he gets here, I would ask permission to hear those words." Allison pointed at the hot rod chomper who nodded and said, "I'm fine. The name's Bernard, by the way." Allison frowned and said, "I had an older brother named Bernard." Then began muttering to herself as she healed a small wound and said, "I'm Bernard." Dave arrived 10 minutes later, and everyone but Pete hopped up into the flying RV. Allison looked at Pete and asked, "What are you doing, Pete?" Pete found her and said in as caring a voice he could manage, "Allison, I love you. Never let harm come to our son." Pete closed the door on Allison, turned, and then hypered back into the graveyard. Dave took off, and Allison began to cry. She yelled out, "No! Dave, please go back for him!" Dave looked at Allison, frowned, and said, "This is something he has to do for himself." Dave turned around and focused on flying the RV. Allison leant against the wall and cried to herself. She was never going to let this go with Pete, if he ever came back. Desmond walked over to his mom and said caringly, "Please cheer up. I'm sure Dad will be fine." I screamed at her son. "Fine? He's going to get himself killed. 12 years apart, you finally come back, 1 week together, and he's already trying to get himself killed." Allison went back crying to herself while Desmond walked over to a couch and began sobbing to himself. I sat next to him and said, "Look, Desmond, it will be fine. Your mom isn't going to stay mad forever. Your dad will come back and she will come." Desmond looked down and said in terror in his voice, "What if my dad doesn't come back?" From all of this. He hypered back into the graveyard and searched out the toxic pea that wanted him dead. He was going to settle this with words, or peas. It only took Pete 10 minutes to find Colin, who Colin was meeting with, chilled Pete to the core. His brother really did want him dead. Pete could see the cactus or chomper anywhere nearby, so he snuck his way towards the toxic tree and P-shirt. When he got close enough, Pete lunged out of a nearby bush and tackled Colin to the ground. Jack jumped back in fright while Colin yelled, "What the Dave?" Colin shut up as soon as he saw Pete on top. Look of pure fury in his face. Pete snarled at the P-shirt and toxic Pete. "You thought I would let you terrorize my family? You're wrong, Colin. And you," Pete pointed at Jack and said, "I had hope you would come to your senses, but I see you haven't. Let's settle this now. The easy way or the hard way?" Jack tackled Pete off and with Colin and said, "I'll make this swift." Jack pulled out a knife and placed it on Pete's chest, right above his heart. Pete growled at Jack and shoved him off. Colin tried to subdue Pete by shooting him and potentially poisoning him. Colin missed and was quickly brought down by Pete. Growling, Pete turned his attention to his knife-wielding brother. Dual-wielding! Wait. Calamity looked at the sapphire Pete and couldn't help but feel happy that Desmond felt like he did whenever he was at home. Somewhere deep inside him, his decaying soul, something cried out to him to try and comfort the fire Pete. Giving in, Calamity sat next to Desmond and said, "Know how it feels being yelled at by the one person who's supposed to love you no matter what." Desmond looked at the undead P-shirt next to him and said, "How do you deal with it?" Calamity sighed and said in a voice of self-loathing, "Did terrible things. I put you down and a bunch of other plants. In the end, I got what I deserved." Desmond frowned and said, "You know, I truly am sorry for what I did. Look, I was wondering if you wanted to start from scratch." Calamity looked at the fire Pete in utter shock and said, You want to start again? After all I put you through? You forgive me?" Desmond smiled and said, Of course, it was never your fault you acted the way you did. If you had parents that cared for you, you would have been different." Calamity, for the first time in a long time, well, that's weird, felt happy. Truly happy. It took Dave 10 minutes to fly them to Sinatra's house. Sinatra came out and met the group of plants. When she saw Allison, though, she ran up to Firefly and asked, "Allison, what's the matter? Where's Pete?" Allison stopped crying and said angrily, "That damn idiot decided we would be safer, I guess, if he took on our pursuers by himself. I hope he learns a lesson from this." Well, I hope so. Sinatra was taken aback as she assumed Allison meant she wanted Pete to be hurt. Sinatra quickly chimed too. "Don't wish pain on our plan. Please. It could come back to seriously haunt you." Allison sighed and said, "Fine, didn't mean it like that, son. Please, can we come inside?" Sinatra sighed as well and said, "Fine. All of you, inside now." Dave took off as Allison, Desmond, Bernard, Allie, Calamity, and Sinatra headed into the large house. Besides, Sinatra offered them all beverages for taking a seat beside them on the couch. She went on to say, "Expecting company, so don't be surprised someone knocks on the door. If they do, don't answer it, just in case." The other plants in the room nodded, but Sinatra went out to set up the guest's bedroom. After an hour of arriving, someone knocked on the door. Ron got up and greeted the two sunflowers who stood in the door. "Mr. and Mrs. Helianthus, nice of both of you to arrive. Please come in." Allison heard the name Helianthus coming from the door, got up and went to investigate. What she saw shocked her to the core. Two sunflowers in the doorway also shocked her to the core. Eventually, the older male sunflower spluttered, We left you to die. How did you survive out there?" Allison was on the verge of tears when she said, "You ungrateful, good-for-nothing parents. I failed one exam, and you both disowned me, kicked me out of our home, and onto the streets. That's what happened. The older sunflowers glared at Allison and the old female sunflowers. What we did was out of love. Allison screamed at her parents. Out of love? Who out of love? Who out of love? Throws their daughter out of the streets to die. I survived because at least one of our family truly cared about me. Now they're dead. Two elder sunflowers ground said simultaneously. You were always the ungrateful child. Sin yelled at them again. The flames of her head changed to light blue. Ungrateful? I was always looked over. I lived in the shadow of my older brother. It was always Bernard this, Bernard that. Both of you never appreciated me. Allison couldn't continue. She was breaking down in tears. Sinatra and Allison's parents walked over to emotionally distraught the firefly on her father's said, I'm so sorry, Allison. We never knew how you felt. If we did, we would have been better parents. Allison continued to cry, the pain of 26 years of suffering finally escaping her system. Pete looked into the eyes of her brother. One promptly looked away. Pete growled and said, Why can't you look at me in the eyes one last time? Jack Simon looks like he was on the verge of tears when he said, I might forget you're my enemy. Pete lowered his defense and said, Well, do it. I want my brother back. Jack's son started tearing as he said, So do I. Pete's mom said, Well, come on then. What are you waiting for? Let's try and go back to being brothers again. Jack also smiled and said, tears running down his face. We wouldn't like that. Pete turned around and made his way towards the exit of a dark graveyard. Just after turning around, a cool, sharp sensation ran through Pete's stomach. Pete turned around to find Jack in tears and holding a knife covered in Pete-Shear's blood. Jack whispered to Pete as Pete collapsed. Pete turned around to find Jack in tears and holding a knife covered in Pete-Shear's blood. Jack whispered to Pete as Pete collapsed. Well, Pete's dead. I'm so sorry. Please tell Mom and Dad I truly am. Pete growled at Jack and said weakly, You coward! You couldn't have fought me Pete couldn't continue. He had blacked out. Jack laid his brother down on the ground, his vision blurred by the tears. Jack pulled out a pen and a document that had his brother's name on, and crossed it out. Well, Pete is now dead. Please don't throw me out. I never meant to fail. That's like flashback. Oh, sorry. Flashback a long time ago. Then, yeah. Young Firefly pleaded the older Sunflower through out the front door and said, You shame the Hyanthus name. You aren't a child anymore. Sunflower slammed the front door shut. Left sat on the lawn and cried. She stopped. She looked over the star floating in the sky and wondered herself which star was her younger sister. After some more yelling from inside, the Sunflower that was only 2 years older than the Fireflower came out and said, Look, sis, you need to get out of here before Mom and Dad find out I'm gone. Fireflower nodded and set off after her older brother, who had already set off down the lawn. The two plants talked about their stingy parents and how unfortunate their other two living siblings were to still be there when a rocket flew out of nowhere towards the fire. The slightly older brother jumped in front of his sister and took the rocket, as soon as the rocket hit. Fireflower looked down at her older brother and cried out in anguish. No, Bernard, please don't be dead. A pool of blood began to form, and the Firefly realized she couldn't save her brother. She felt that his pulse finally stopped. She cried and muttered to herself, This is all my fault. I failed to pass my medical exam. I failed my family, and now I failed the one plant that really did care about me. The shocked parents. Oh shit. What the hell's happening to my internet? Wait guys, I cannot even, my computer is now dead or something. I cannot, there we go. Could you guys, can you guys wait for me for a second please? I'll fix my internet connection. 3 minutes later. Oh my god, the internet freaking, ugh. This is so bad. I wish my internet was better. It's only 3 bars every day. Well, like, before that, this is 5 bars all the time. 5 bars! So, okay. Desmond, Bernard, Allie, and Calamity walked out in the hallways. Allison, Sinatra, and their parents were in. Allison's mother looked up at the new arrival to scream when they saw Calamity. Allison's father looked up, threw himself in front of his wife, and said, "What is that thing? It's definitely not alive." Calamity growled at the elder flowers and said, "I may be undead, but I'm still a plant, and I still have feelings." Calamity was interrupted by Allison's mother. "This isn't possible. Should we kill it with fire?" Calamity looked taken back, and Desmond stepped in and said, "Who do you think you are to come in here and judge a plant based on their appearance?" Allison cut Desmond off and said through the tears, "Desmond, stop. Speak to your grandparents with a little respect." That was Desmond's turn to be shocked. He stammered, "My grandparents?" Allison's parents were also taken aback. Her father said, "Grandparents? That means our son-in-law is a pea-shooter? And our grandson an effing pea-shooter?" An effing pea-shooter. "You have brought shame on our house one too many times now." Scott up, glared at her parents, and yelled, "I knew this would happen. I would find someone who really did love me, that wasn't a sunflower, and you would both hate them. Not all pea-shooters are scumbags. Not all choppers are cacti either. You never wanted me to be happy." Allison was in tears again while her parents smirked, said in unison, "So where is our son-in-law?" Desmond growled and said, "Sacrificing himself to protect us?" Allison looked down and said as well, "You haven't been formally joined together yet, but like my son said, he's here now. He's off doing something." Allison's parents continued to smirk, and her father said, "Looks like we were right in the end, Petunia. If she survived, she would fall in love with a gutter rat." Some Cutter fell off and shouted, "He isn't a gutter! He suffered worse than me!" Just then a blood-covered toxic piece stumbled through the front door and said, "Sinatra, I need your help." Toxic Pete cut off himself off when he saw Allison, Desmond, Bernard, and Calamity. In a few seconds he managed to say, "You! How did you get here?" Desmond tackled Toxic Pete and yelled, "Where's my dad? If you hurt him, I will kill you!" The look of worry on the Toxic Pete's face changed to one pure glee as he said maliciously, "Lying in a ditch? Bleeding out after I shoved his knife in his throat?" Toxic Pete pulled out a knife that was covered in blood and Desmond hopped off of them in shock. Nachi glared at the Toxic Pete and said, "You're all kinds of messed up Collins. What happened to you?" "Allie, pass me my phone." "Allie, pass me my phone." Handed Sinatra her phone. Sinatra dialed the emergency service and said, "I need a leaf officer around here right now. My friend has done something awful." Sinatra talked to the emergency services. Alice explained to Desmond why she hadn't seen her parents in a very long time. Bernard restrained Colin with Calamity's help. Allison's parents talked between each other feverishly. The small child wandered the dark in the graveyard, eyes peeled for anything green. She gripped the crossbow her father made for her tightly. She was afraid of being attacked. After wandering the graveyard for 10 minutes, a decaying Arctic trooper approached the young girl and said, "Hey, have you found any?" The young girl jumped and nearly shot the zombie and said, "Not cool, Dad. I could have shot you." The zombie laughed and said, "Very punny." Do you remember who the true enemy is, though? The little girl smiled and said, Of course I do. Humans and zombies shouldn't be enemies. We all need to know that the plants are the true enemy. The Arctic trooper smiled and said, That's my girl. Come on, I'll help you bag a couple, eh? The girl rolled her eyes and said, Come on, Dad. That's unfair. You have a rocket launcher. Soppy simply laughed and said, Fine, then. I will just use my knife. Deal? The young girl shook her hand with her father's decaying hand and said, Deal. Let's go bag us some plants. After 20 minutes, the small girl found a knocked pea-shirt, blood covering his beaten teeth, quickly grabbed them, to her disappointment, and still had a pulse, threw them into a large bag she had with her. Father came over to her and asked, What'd you get? She opened up at the bag. Just a pea-shirt. Still alive, though, as if it's something important to do. Father grabbed her when he looked into the bag and said, Know this plan. You take it back alive and interrogation later. The small girl nodded and set off after her father. The little girl walked beside her father as they waltzed into the large base that was full of zombies, but also humans. All decaying paleontologists approached them and asked, What did you get this time? The trooper frowned slightly and whispered to the paleontologist, A plant that has been a problem for us a long time now. The paleontologist also frowned and signaled the young girl to follow her to their office. Wait, that's a paleontologist is a girl? So a different kind of human. Come on, freaking internet. Please just don't do this to me. Please. Just don't do this to me. I'll get back when this is done. If I can, I know. Why is this not freaking loading? I cannot do anything right now. It's just broken. Oh wait, it's back. It's back. There we go. 5 minutes after Sinatra called the emergency services, Petunia, Allison's mother, asked, So what is the name of our to-be son-in-law? Petunia sounded disgusted as she said last half of her sentence. Mr. Brown said, Pete Lathyrus. Allison's father cut her off and said, Did you just say Lathyrus? I hope you didn't. Now Desmond was frowning as well and asked, What's the matter with my last name? Petunia cried out in anguish. And our grandson carries the cursed name. This is the end of Helene's line. Simon asked, What's the matter with the name? Petunia looked at her husband and said, You tell her, Lou. I think it's best. Lou looked down and Simon began. We all know how some families are basically known across suburbia. Our WAS known for its skills in producing sun drops, and then our healing skills. Of course, that was before Allison's mistake. The Lathyrus family was known for their fierceness in battle, especially when someone they cared about was in danger. They were always a small family because they all shared a common attribute. That would do anything for someone they cared about. She frowned hard when she said, That's why Pete was always so willing to throw himself in front of a rocket. Fist or pellet for me. Right? Then Petunia frowned and Lou continued. If I knew about this, we would split you two straight away. Lord fell in love with Lathyrus, the fool. His girlfriend uprooted in the middle of an assault, changed lanes, and then sacrificed himself to save him. Your uncle stabbed himself the following night. Petunia hugged Lou and Allison, and looked at her parents in disbelief. Allison stood angrily at her hugging parents. You would have split me from the one plant that loves me? I can't believe it. All over a name. Petunia glared at Allison and said, It would have been for the best. At least you wouldn't have been hurt like your uncle. Gina's expression changed to sympathy when she said, "It may not have, and it may still not seem like it. But we really do love you." So looked at her mother and said, "Amy, if you really love me, you'd be happy I'm with Pete, that we have a child." God dang it. Something. Pete woke up in a dark, dingy room, was shackled to a chair and appeared to be falling apart. Looking around, his dark brown eyes fell upon the face of a small human girl. She looked at the human in surprise and asked. He looked at the human and asked, "Where am I?" He looked at him and said coldly, "None of your business, scum. Just wait till my dad shows up. Speaking of him, here he is." He looked at something behind Pete's chair and said, "Dad, just in time. Our guest has just woken." An uneven, deep, and strange voice replied, "Rosie, you been speaking to this weed?" Pete growled, but Rosie quickly slapped him. Pete stopped in shock. A human, someone he would throw his life on the line for, simply because it was in his DNA, slapped him. Rosie didn't even look affected by what she had done. So after, an Arctic trooper placed their decaying hands on her shoulder and said, "Well done, Rosie. Remember, no mercy for their kind." Human smiled in compliment and said, The papa? I don't know." Pete looked at the two in shock. A zombie, let alone an elite, didn't harm the human. A paleontologist came chair and said to the Arctic trooper, "Alexei, I think we should start." Alexei nodded and asked Rosie to leave their room. Rosie closed the door behind him, and the paleontologist went and locked the door. Door locked, Alexei started by saying, "Why are you so different? You didn't die to a wound that would have killed any other weed." Pete growled at Alexei and said, "I am not a weed." Alexei growled and shot Pete in the stem. Pete bit back the urge to swear while Alexei said, "I'm not in the mood for games, plant. So answer this question." Pete glared back to Alexei and said, Because I'm not one to lay down, die with. There are plants I need to protect." Alexis laughed at the bleeding t-shirt and said, "You protected something? Ha! Don't remember you doing that all those years ago. You know, the night my brains were eaten." Pete looked at the zombie and shot as they leaned towards him and whispered, "I remember you now. You're one of the P-shirts that was supposed to protect me. Didn't do your job. I doubt you do it today." Pete grunted at Alexis, but didn't offer a reply. Arctic Trooper was unimpressed, so he shot Pete till he finally gave in and yelled in pain. He took a whole clip from the frozen Z1 assault blaster. Alexis was done. He unchained Pete, grabbed him by the throat. Pete managed to say through the grip, I can't breathe." So he smiled maliciously and said, "Good. Can't wait for you to die." Alexei was interrupted by the paleontologist who said, "Spare the weed's life. We couldn't use him." He frowned before dropping Pete, who landed on the floor coughing. Alexei smirked at the wounded P-shooter, but decided he wasn't good enough, so he kicked the P-shooter in the head. Pete suddenly groaned after the kick to the head. Pleased, Alexis picked up Pete and dragged him to one of the cells in the base's prison. Yay, another flashback! Peter fired as fast as he could against the football zombie that ran down his lane. Despite his best attempt, he appeared to see no progress, hoping the planner would react soon. Just as the football zombie was about to attack the repeater who held his ground, the football zombie stood on the rake, which finished it off. Only 1 minute later, his eldest son, a repeater as well, finished off the last brown coat. Just as the plants on lawn defense prepared to unroot for the night, earth began to shake. Clancy saw the fear in the plant's eye. Reaper dug his roots deeper in the ground and prepared to fight the machine, even if it would mean his death. Reaper looked over at his son. They were also preparing for a fight, realizing that if they both died, their family would be in danger. He yelled out across the lawn to his son, "Jack, go inside with the other plants. Protect them if they get past me." Her name Jack yelled back, But Dad! Peter glared at his son and yelled, "Go now! Protect your mother and brother!" And turned back towards the zombie, which now loomed over him, as the fancy giant metal foot crushed him. Peter expected the blow to kill him, but something inside him burned brighter than the dark that had attempted to engulf him. In his eyes, something far above yelled out, and before Peter knew what was happening, he was being forcefully uprooted by a zombie that he'd never seen before. The zombie managed to unroot him and somehow propelled himself to the top of the zombie. The scream broke up out of the house, and soon plants were running out of the building, and covered in human blood. Strange zombies laughed as some of the plants fled. Suddenly the controller robot said to repeat, "What's make you so different? You should be dead." Peter growled at the zombie, couldn't help but wonder about the same question. So, I think the freaking family, I think the name is, Lathyris. Lathyris family is... Wait. So, the Lathyris family is almost undead. Well, they do die, but not as easy to die. So, next story, chapter 14. Damn it. Oh, there we go. It's been 6 hours since Colin was arrested for suspected murder. Allison at dinner table in Sinatra's home. The other plans over at Sinatra's house. Allison glared at her parents while she also began to feel worried for Pete. She may be mad at him, but he was dead. She would never forgive herself. Sinatra frowned. She could see Allison was beginning to feel worried about Pete, so she said, "You've not been around Pete as long as you, Allison. But in my short time around him, I've learned he's tough, but won't let himself go down until you and Desmond were safe." Allison smiled weakly at Sunshine for saying, "I'm going back to the graveyard to see if he isn't back soon." Then Sinatra frowned while Desmond said, "If you're going, Mom, I'm going." Allison sent off and said in its final voice, "No, you aren't." She began to tear up. She said, "If I find your father dead, then you die. I don't know how I would go on." Tears threatened to flow as she thought of possible outcomes. Desmond looked up. Didn't want to argue with his mom. Calamity patted Desmond's back and said, "I will protect Desmond if he goes." Ron looked up from his food and said in agreement, "And so will I." I smiled and said, "And so shall I." That's like Shakespeare. It's so Shakespeare-ish. "I will protect him if he dies." I don't know. So their main firepower would be Desmond and Allison, but the weak point was also Desmond and Allison. Allison smiled weakly. What Petunia and Lou said shocked everyone at the table. "I suppose I should come as well. Seems like fun." Allison looked at the table and smiled her biggest grin of them all. She ended up saying, "Well then, I suppose we all could go after dinner." A lot of them cheered for returning the food set before them. Back on the freaking lab, Pete stuck his head out the cell he was in and looked around. Only one other cell was occupied. Opposite him was occupied by a savage-looking human that never looked up, said in a patchy, gruffy voice, "Aren't you going to shoot me? That's the only reason you're in this cell is to kill me." Pete frowned and said, "Why would I kill you?" The human snorted and said, "Don't play ignorant, weed. Just finish me off already." He frowned hard and said, "I'm not a weed and not here to kill you. It's plant's law, never hurt a human." Rosie Henry Hall laughed. Then finally looked at Pete and said in shock, "Well, you let Rosie slap you without trying to hurt her. I suppose it was either shock or actually goodwill that stopped you." One of the guards used the butt of their rifle to knock Pete's head back in his cell. Pete growled at the human but didn't shoot. It wasn't worth breaking the law over. Half an hour later, the door at the end of the hall opened, and Rosie, her father, and the paleontologist walked towards Pete's cell. The paleontologist opened the sun. Alexei grabbed Pete. The group then went through the giant base that was bustling with both zombies and humans into the office. Pete had first woken up. The office was seeing dark, dingy, the only difference being that the blood that had stained the room has been cleaned. Alexei chained Pete to the seat again and asked, "Are you willing to cooperate now?" Pete glared at the Arctic Trooper for asking, "What happens if I cooperate?" Arctic Trooper laughed and said, "I won't beat the grass out of you straight away." Pete growled and said, "Fine then, what do you want to know?" Let's see Smarkins asked, "Why were you knocked out in the graveyard?" Pete frowned and said, "I was betrayed by my bro, an old friend." "Must hurt being betrayed by the ones that you put your trust. At least you know how I felt when the brown coats walked into my house." Pete growled at him again and said, "I wasn't old enough to fight that night, so don't take your anger out of me. My father died trying to protect you." Next he slapped Pete and yelled at him, "I know you don't think I would feel slightly guilty knowing that few of you who really stood up for me died when I found out Rosie was born the night before I died." Jesus Christ. That was a shock. Damn. I was the happiest, and that I would have to protect her. Pete interrupted the mad zombie and said, "I know how that feels. When I found out I was a father, I made a vow to never let my child be hurt, and I failed in the first 2 days. I still haven't forgiven myself." Lexus stopped and looked at the bloody Pisher's eyes and saw something he hadn't seen before in another creature. True compassion. Pete looked into the zombie's eyes and saw that the zombies still had feelings. Rosie's looked at her father and said in a concerned voice, "Rosie." "Wait, Pop, what's wrong?" Lexus looked away from Pete and said, "Rosie, come here, please." Rosie walked over and Alexei continued, looking in his eyes. "What do you see?" She looked into Pete's eyes and stepped back in shock before saying, "No, it can't be. Plants shouldn't be compassionate and hurt." She never finished her sentence. She was too busy trying to calm herself down. Alexei frowned and said, "So you aren't lying. You really do have a family to protect." Pete smiled weakly and yes. "Yes, I hope they don't come looking for me. It's too dangerous. Things are changing, and it doesn't look good for me or my family. Or Anne." Still have 6 chapters to go. And this thing could have been like somewhere around like 38 minutes-ish. Could you please just stop interrupting my videos? Yeah, being a pony or a human. Luckily, I just changed to a pony while the internet is gone. Sadly, I do not have freaking face cam. Jeez. If there's face cam, you would see me as a pony. Anyways, it's 6:25 and I might stop recording at 8 because I have to go for a live match with a guy named Kobe Ngumo thingy guy at 9 today, the 3rd of February. So that I could get like free weapons for my game I played for such a long time. So yeah, I might stop recording at 8, and it's kind of hard to press the shutters because I am a freaking pony. Let's see. Yeah. For some reason I could still move this, but trying to press something. Yeah, I could play Minecraft for like a day or something. Actually, I could actually do everything, but then like it's kind of a bit hard. paleontologists grabbed their blaster and held it up to the back of Pete's head. Pete felt the heat emanating from the bony muzzle of the shotgun. He growled. Alexis looked at the bone-wearing paleontologist and said uneasily, "Put it down, Francois." The paleontologist smirked and said, "What's the matter, Alexei? An hour ago you were describing to me this worthless weed's death." Alexei growled as the paleontologist said, "Plants can change. I need this plant alive." Francois laughed and said, "You feel sorry for it? You are always the weak one. Wait till the warden hears about it." Francois comes off and looked down. Pulp protruded from his chest. The alarm rang out and all hell broke loose in the large base. The paleontologist collapsed. An exhausted voice said so quietly it was nearly a whisper, "Not my..." The rest of something slumping before sounded out, and Pete felt a strange feeling run down his neck. Alexei asked Rosie to unlock Pete while he investigated where the voice came from. Pete thanked Rosie for unlocking him before setting off after Alexei. Alexei and Pete walked back into the office. 1 minute later, with a downed repeater, Alexei laid the repeater down on the desk while Pete set about reviving the repeater. Alexei looked out a window, and that was also convert and swore at what he saw. Giant steel gates into the base was being locked while the number of guards were being doubled. Someone knocked on the door and asked, "Alexei, you in there?" Stefan said, "Yeah," the voice replied. "The warden wants to see you." Alexei swore silently and said, "Okay, I'll tell her." "Okay, I will go see her in a minute," sputtered before walking up. "Okay, I'll tell her." Alexei frowned and said to Rosie, "Make sure no one comes into here while I'm gone. And make sure these two plants stay in here." Rosie nodded and Alexei walked out into a large base. Rosie locked the door behind her father and sat next to Pete. The injured Peter laid his paw against the down Peter's chest and looked at a concentration on his face. Rosie looked at the two plants questioningly and doing, What are you doing?" Friends asked said in frustration. "Try to revive him? I can't, and it's making me so hopeless." Rosie frowned at the plan when she saw a verge of tears, so he asked, "How do you revive him?" "You place your hand on their chest or their heart and focus on the energy in you. I feel so weak right now. I think if I revive them, I'll collapse." Rosie pushed the injured Peter aside and placed her hand on Peter's chest. That's when she felt some of the energy in her drain from what felt like her hand. For a few seconds, sensation stopped and the repeater coughed. Pete and Rosie looked at each other in shock, and the repeater managed to say weakly, "Pete, is that you?" Pete smiled weakly enough. Pete also smirked weakly and said, "Oh, thank Dave, my sacrifice was worth in the end." He looked at the Peter and asked, "What sacrifice?" Peter frowned and said, "Explain later. Right now we need to get out of here." Pete frowned and Peter cut him off. "I at least want to know who you are." He was silent, look of self-loathing foaming on her. He said in a voice of disappointment, I'm your father." Pete stumbled backwards in shock. "You have revived your own father?" Damn! Damn, I wish I could read this the whole every day. Allison sighed as she walked into a large graveyard with Desmond, Bernard, Calamity, Ali, Sinatra, and her parents. Sinatra walked up to her and said, "Look, if we split into two groups, we can cover the graveyard in half the time." Allison nodded and said, "Yes, but how are we going to split?" Desmond walked up to his mother and said, I could go with my friends, while you could go with Miss Sandra, Grandpa, and Grandma." Allison frowned at the sign. She eventually said, "I need to let you grow up at something. Yes, you go with your friends. Us adults will stick together." Desmond hypered towards his friend. Allison frowned at her son. Was I making the right decision?" Lou frowned at Allison and said, "He'll be fine. I'm sure of it. If he has Lathrus blood in him, he will find his peak." Allison smiled weakly and asked, "No one knows for certain. This families have like a mental connection between each other that acts like a beacon when we're in trouble. Unfortunately, our family's fallen apart, so has connection. Allison frowned and asked, "Why haven't I felt that connection before? Even I wasn't, even if it wasn't my siblings or you two, just I should have that connection with my son." San said, "Why didn't I make him my partner when I had the chance?" Let's not think of this. We need to go look for Pete. Allison nodded. Group of adults set off. So now they're just trying to like steal Pete. Like Allison and Sinatra are like stealing Pete. Like, Pete, go with me. No, Pete, go with me. That's what I think. Like before Pete and Allison actually got married. And I watched the undead Pete Shearer let the same fire Pete and Hot Rod Chomper had buried him not long ago. But Eddie? Who's Eddie again? Who's Eddie again? Oh, the scientist. Eddie watched the undead Pete Shearer let the same fire Pete and Hot Rod Chomper that had buried him not long ago, as well as sunflowers through the graveyards. Road plants would be searching for something. Eddie grabbed his shotgun and set off after the plants. 5 minutes of stalking a plant. Eddie was close enough to warp right into the group of plants. His target carefully. Eddie warped into the group of plants, grabbed the fire Pete by their throat, and warped out. Behind himself, Eddie heard the sunflower screamed out, "Desmond!" Eddie smirked and squirmed plant. Fire on their head slowly getting smaller. Eddie threw the fire Pete as hard as he could against the gravestone, which caused the plant to groan in pain. Before he aimed his shotgun at the fire Pete, Allison heard Addie scream out her son's name. She swore and set off at the scream. Calamity hypered in the direction the scientist has warped while Ali rode Bernard, who ran after the undead. Bushes behind Eddie began to shake, so the scientist pulled the trigger. Shotgun tripped barrels on a chemical blasting shotgun, held the projectile. That the fire Pete was trying to get up. Projectiles made contact. The fire Pete yelled out in pain before collapsing. Desmond is now dead. Desmond's now dead. Pete managed to stammer as he stared at the repeater in the shop. No, you should be... You hear it cut Pete off and said in voice coded by self-love, "Dead? No, I made the worst deal ever. I betrayed my family, my friends. I don't deserve the Lazarus name." He continued to look at the repeater and shop, finally saying, "What did you do?" Peter sat up, beside instead. It began the night of the attack. Flashback to a long time. The weak repeater was held up by a zombie that vaguely resembled a human soldier. The zombie made the repeater look at the strangest looking zombie of all time. Had a large brain protruding from the back of their head, but also wore a lab coat that appeared to be well kept. Strangest looking zombie. "Oh, Zomboss, you're too stupid to speak. I meant Walnut smarter than you." Here, despite knowing his life was nearing its end, Brown said, "It's not one of your zombies. You can't just order me around." So China his grip Peter's throat and said in a menacing voice, "No one talks to our leaders like that." Peter's eyes widened in fear as he realized death for him was approaching fast. He tried to extend his life, tried to save his family. He managed to say, "I want to make a deal." This is darkness began to envelop the repeater. The soldier zombie relaxed. Peter gasped as they could finally breathe again. The other zombie replied in a nearly joking tone, "And what do you propose?" Peter stuck the zombie look of determination and said, "My service in exchange of your spare family." "In exchange, you spare my family." The other zombie laughed and said, "What sort of service can you provide me?" Finally said, "Tell you where our best fighters are." Leaders of the zombies seemed intrigued and said, "Fine then, I'll just send in my zombies to fetch your family." Peter sighed in relief while the leaders of the soldier zombies entered the house. 3 minutes, Zombot moved forward and got into position where the leaders of zombies and the repeaters could see inside. Almost immediately, chills ran down the repeater's stem as an ice fiend yelled at, "You traitor! My father was right! I never should fell in love with a..." Ice field was cut out, but she was quickly filled with yellow pellets and the strange weapon the soldier carried. Peter felt a large hole develop into his soul, deep longing forming. Zombie glanced and reached into a hidden crevice, which led them to point out a young repeater who appeared to be on the verge of tears. The older repeater that was chained down the zombie looked at the terrified repeater that was being held up by a brown coat that was appeared to be hanging by a chunk of their stems and said, "Son, I'm so..." The older repeater simply cried out, "I wish you were never my father! You aren't a real..." And like his mother, young repeater was shot by a soldier, dropped onto the floor, determined to protect him from the same fate as brother and mother. Wait, Hebrew felt another hole. Wait. The young repeater felt another hole falling into his soul. But it felt like there's no hope left for him. The small light still shined and refused to give up. It was his last remaining son. He was determined to protect him for the same fate as his brother and mother. Peter glared at the little zombie and yelled at him, using the hope that his son was giving him to end. "You bastard, you broke the end of the deal!" The little zombies laughed and said, "Of course I did. I mean, what do you expect?" Flashback to the present. Bruises behind Eddie burst and ranged. Undead Pisher tackled him to the ground. Eddie tried to push the undead Pisher off him. They appeared to have rooted themselves in the ground, four rotating barrels now protruding from their mouth. Eddie growled at them and said, "I brought you back to life, Calamity. You wouldn't hurt little old me." Eddie took advantage of the undead Pisher and momentary hesitation, grabbed his shotgun, laughed as he pulled the trigger twice and knocked out the undead Pisher. Calamity blacked out. "Could you just shut up?" Ugh. Oh my god, I keep getting interrupted. Calamity blacked out before being able to do any damage to Science. Then Bernard coming across him first. Ali hopped off Bernard and revived Calamity, who appeared to be shocked and murderously angered. Calamity hypered around the sound of warping scientists while Ali hopped back up on Bernard and continued to search for Desmond. When they did find Desmond, he had a cut on his head that had left a large pool of blood around the gravestone he had leaning against it, while the fire on his head was dangerously small. Ali quickly revived Desmond, who gasped in shock when he opened his eyes. I made a bandage out of a dirty rag top she had found lying on the floor nearby and covered the cut on Desmond's head. Nearby, Allison yelled out, "Ali, Bernard, Calamity, where are you?" Ali yelled back, "Over here, down in the ditch." In a few seconds, Calamity burst out of the bushes, a deep gash running down his stem, gash bleeding heavily. Calamity breathing heavily. He gasped at the undead Pisher and asked, "What happened?" A dark smile formed on his face as he said meaningless. He gave the scientist a taste of his own medicine. I shielded away from the undead Pisher and said in fear, "Calamity, what are you looking at?" I smiled deeper and he said, "A lovely salad." Since Calamity finished speaking, he lunged it out. Before the undead Pisher could hurt the sunflower, Desmond threw himself in front of them and took the tackle. Calamity began to rip chunks out of Damon's stem and yelled out in pain. Allison screamed when she heard the cries in pain and as fast as she could towards the yell of pain. I tried to push Calamity off to Desmond, but he appeared to be hard to move than normal. In a few seconds, Bernard came out behind some bushes and tackled the undead Pisher. Using his head as a ram, Calamity yelped as he was thrown across the clearing into a gravestone. He was knocked out cold. Allison burst into the clearing with the other Alice just as Calamity blacked out. And she immediately ran to her son, who was bleeding dangerously. "Is she gonna die?" "On your own." She grabbed the rags remaining of a dirty top nearby and covered as many of the wounds on her son. Desmond was barely conscious, and he managed to say, "Calamity, zombie went crazy." So he cut her son off and said, terrified, "You're alright, I promise." Desmond smiled weakly before blacking out. So nearly screamed, tears now freely flowing, evaporating after a few seconds. The platoon gathered around the grandson and began healing the multiple wounds in an attempt to extend the small fire's life. Bernard walked over to Calamity, who was coming to, a look of confusion on their face. When Calamity saw the growling hot rod chomper approaching, stammered in fear. "Bernard, what are you doing here?" So growling, Bernard said meaningfully, "Giving a taste of your own medicine." Calamity's eyes widened in fear when Calamity yelled in pain. Bernard ripped chunks after chunks out of his stomach, even though the undead felt pain. Ali ran over through the hot rod chomper, threw himself on her and yelled, "Bernard, stop! You've gone far enough!" Bernard growled at Ali and said in the same meaning voice, "Move, Ali, this week hasn't paid enough." There's not gonna be a plant who's gonna just pay enough. Bro. I cut off Bernard and said in a voice, "He has, just look, he's worse than Desmond." I said it was true. Clem missing more chunks of his stem than Desmond. Bernard still growled and said, "Ali, he tried to eat you. If it weren't for Desmond, you would be on the ground bleeding out in pain." I cut him out and said in defense, "Well, look at him. He's in the exact situation you just described. God dang it." I cut Ali off and said in satisfaction, "Good. Don't know why Desmond would trust the plant that gave him the most grief." I sighed and said, "I agree, but this is a plant's life on the line. Hello?" Bernard cut Ali off again and said in anger, "Leave it, Ali. It isn't a plant." Ali glared at the hot rod chopper and turned around, bent down again, covering the wounds of the undead Pichu. Bernard growled at her, but she ignored him, getting angry. Bernard shoved Ali onto Calamity and said in anger, "If you care about this week's life over your own or Desmond's, I won't stop you then." Bernard, burrowing in the ground, headed towards the exit of the grave. Sign, she would try to talk to Bernard later, push herself off the Calamity and continue to try to cover the wounds. Bernard felt himself being dragged through the dark, then engulfed him towards the bleak room. Letting himself move towards the dark room, and hear a familiar voice. "What do you suggest I should have done?" He yelled, breaking the silence. It was quickly followed by another yell, the one oddly familiar. "Die like the rest of us would have!" By this time, Desmond could see the inside of the dark room. Inside a dingy office sat a human girl who stared at a repeater, arguing with an advanced Pichu. Desmond got a closer look at the advanced Pichu. He realized it was his father. The human girl interrupted the argument and said, "Quiet, we're being watched." Desmond felt like a strange chill run through his stomach as a strange female voice called him. "Who are you?" Desmond frowned and replied to the dissembled voice in a fragment of imagination. "Desmond?" Voice didn't reply over for a minute. It did, sounding angry as it said, "You shouldn't be here. Your father is fine, though. He will make it out of here alive. Barely." Desmond wanted to reply, but he was being pulled away from the scene. This dissembled voice was barely audible. "You'll find him in the place where the story began." Desmond opened his eyes to find his mother looking over him, looks of worry and relief on her face. His mother said, believed clearly in her voice, "Thank Dave you arrived. How are you feeling?" Desmond sat up. He was lying in a bed he had never seen before and said, I feel fine. I think I know where Dad is." She began to tear up and said with regret and sadness running through her voice, "I think you're imagining things. We found the body his body near yours," Fran said. No. He's where his story began. Can't have been in the graveyard." Sim looked at her son, worry on her face, and she said, "Are you sure you're fine? I think you hit your head harder than we thought." He cut his mother off and said in anger, "No, I'm fine. I know that I'm all right. I will show you." Desmond got out of the bed and stormed out of the room he was in. Turned out to be he was in the hospital. Meant to be stopped by his mother, Desmond hypered out of the hospital himself towards one planet who might know where his father's story began. Rosie opened her eyes to be disappointed. The two planets were still arguing. She got up and pulled the pole to protrude the Francois' chest out and swung it out of the peak. The advanced Pichu hit the floor with a thud as he collapsed, and Rosie quickly knocked out the repeater. She threw the two planets in a large travel pack and grabbed a pen and some paper. She wrote a note on the paper and that read, Dear Father, I will be gone by the time you read this note. I am getting the 2 planes out of here to a place they can be found by their family. Rosie placed the note on the desk, grabbed the crossbow her father has made for her, and opened the door. Locked the door behind her and set off towards the back entrance of the base. So she is a freaking commando soldier. Commando, I guess. I think it's commando. An Arctic trooper getting her daughter becoming a commando. Rosie walked through the large warehouse at the back of the large base that had been her home since the end of the war. She looked through a hole in the wall that very few of the inhabitants of the base knew about. They set off into small remains of suburbia. It's like after Garden Warfare 2. It took her over an hour to find a small graveyard that had been built next to an empty pool. Rosie carefully looked over the fence with a yell of her pack. It gave her a fright. She dropped the pack in an enraged Peter walked out, dragging an equally mad Peter. The 2 planes glared at each other, then Rosie, then at each other again. The 2 argued again. Rosie said, Don't argue. If you want to see your family, you will stay here until they arrive. Pete frowned at the human and said, How do you know they're coming? Your son still believes you're alive. Pete cuts off Rosie's. My son? Does everyone? Rosie cut Pete off and finished his sentence. Think you're dead? Unfortunately, for you, yes. Pete snapped. Must have found the blood he would have left behind. Rosie looked back at the fence. The sunflower must have heard them go. She said, I have to go. Stay with the plants that are coming. She will help you. Hold this. Rosie gave her a purple circular item before running off. Pete looked at Rosie and felt a purple device which started to beep. For a few seconds, the device exploded and blew Pete and his fathers onto their backs. Pete's paws severely mutilated, large cuts on each of their bodies. Sunflower screamed when she heard and ran over to find a sight that chilled her to the core. Vance Fisher, whose large cuts on, who had been badly mutilated, lay on their back, large tumor stems and bulbs. Opposite to the Fisher, a repeater with a similar imagery, just not as bad or numerous. The repeater looked stunned. What she just happened was the Fisher looked unconscious. Sunflower revived the Fisher before asking the repeater to grab the pack which she had left in a small graveyard. Peter got back up, healed most serious wounds, and began to cover with less serious injuries. She sat up and asked, Who are you? Sunflower frowned. The voice sounded slightly deeper than a voice she remembered a long time ago. She replied in a voice she hoped the Peter would remember. Josie. The Peter stumbled back in shock while Peter stared at the sunflower deep in thought. Her broken silence. Josie? Josie Helianthus? Sunflower said, Yes. Do I know you? Peter swore and said, Thought you would have remembered the traitor that ruined all of our lives. Josie's turned to be shocked as she stammered. No. How didn't I see it before? You look familiar. Corinth Lathyrus. He looked at Josie and said in astonishment, Josie, you're a Helianthus? Josie looked at the astonished Peter and said, Yes, I am, but I'm struggling to remember who you are. Your friend said, I'm Pete, your boyfriend's brother. Josie looked at Pete in astonishment and said, Pete, now I remember. How's my ex anyway? Pete growled and said, Hopefully lying in a ditch somewhere. He slapped Pete and said, Don't speak about your brother like that. Pete glared at his father before getting up and walking up in the small grave. Newly made tombstone paled comparison to the tombstone that stood in the center of the grave. He approached the tombstone, tears forming in his eyes. So the tombstone stood a stone carving of an ice bead, immortalized in a post of grief. When Pete was close enough, he read the epitaph that chilled him to the core. Here lies Eliane Lathyrus, a loving mother, wife, aunt, and friend. She'll be sorely missed by those who had the privilege of meeting him. Desmond hypered through the bus stop. Last bus of the night was taking it on the last passenger. He leapt on the bus just as the doors were closing, bellies around his roots, nearly getting caught in the door. An unimpressed human sat in the driver's seat and held out his hand to Desmond. Taking it, the human helped Desmond before pointing to a sign on the wheel said, 10 cents to ride. So he looked down and he realized he didn't have any money. I don't have any money. Bus driver glared at Desmond and opened the door before saying, "Sorry, bud, no free rides." Just before Desmond stepped off the bus, Peter got up and said, "Look, I'll pay for it. Here." The P-shirt's money. Desmond looked at the P-shirt and asked as they walked to his seat near the back of the "Thanks, but why?" P-shirt looked at Desmond and said sadly, "I made lots of mistakes in my life. I'll just try to right some of them." Desmond nodded and said, "Seemed like the right thing for them to do." The rest of the trip was spent in awkward silence. No one was in the bus to speak. It took an hour for the bus to reach the stop that Desmond hopped off. When he did, he wished that the P-shirt luck on their journey before setting off towards the neighbor's home. It took Desmond an uneasy 10 minutes to reach Wolf's house. By the time he did, it was just past midnight. Desmond knocked on the door and waited to be answered, which took 5 minutes of continuous knocking. The door opened and revealed a rather mad Wolf. Was shocked when he saw Wolf. Vivian came downstairs and was visible. Asked, "Desmond, what are you doing here?" Desmond looked at the alien file in a tired voice. "You need to know where that story began, where that means." Wolf ushered Desmond inside into the kitchen where Vivian put the kettle boiling and said, "Desmond, why do you want to know where your dad's story began?" Desmond frowned and said, "Because Mom thinks he's dead. I know he isn't. And that he's where his story began." Wolf looked at Vivian. Both had concerned look on their face for Wolf said, "You really believe he's alive? Then I guess we could go and see. I always want to see the house for myself." So it's a trap again. Smiley face. He sat for a tombstone. He let the tears flow free. He couldn't hold it anymore. Despite hating his father for what he had done, he respected the old repeater, wanting to try and make up for what he had done. Conrad sat next to his son and patted him on the back, while Josie was in the house that stood at the end of the yard. With all description, rusted lawnmower standing guard over nothing. In a few minutes, Conrad said, "Look, I miss your mother as much as you, but staying here isn't going to bring her back. Remember how I told you all those years that if we remember them in the head and in the heart, they never die?" He nodded and wiped his eyes for saying, "Of course. You can never forget a statement like that." Conrad smiled at his son and said, "Well then, your mother isn't really dead. Look, I think we should go inside. It's well past midnight now. I could do with some sleep." Conrad stood up and went inside, while Pete sat in front of the tombstone for a minute or two longer. And Pete got up and headed into the house that he once called home. Josie walked up to him and said, "Why don't you move? You know, it gets lonely here, being all alone and stuff." He looked at her in a questioning look and said, "Why don't you move then?" Joe sighed and said, "I don't know. Something in me kept telling me to stay. I don't think I know why." Josie placed her equivalent to a hand on Pete's chest and walked around, pulling him into a hug before she continued. "You know, you're really attractive as an advanced plant. I can't believe I never saw the beauty in you before." He turned to look at the sunflower that held him in an embrace and said awkwardly, "Josie, look, I have a girl plant and a son, okay? So that held him tightly her grip and said meaninglessly, "Well then, there's 2 more plants on my kill list, and you." Josie threw Pete onto the floor and tasered him into submission before continuing, "Will be mine." Desmond had slept the night at Wolf and was up first, fearing to go and find out whether his father was alive or not. By the time Wolf and Desmond was ready to go, it was nearing lunchtime. Vivian wished Wolf and Desmond a good journey, and the two set off for a house that neither had seen. But Pete has given Wolf a map to find it years ago. It took the 2 plants most of the rest of the day to find the house. The graveyard that they saw chilled them. All the graves were for plants. The most arable tombstone that stood in the center of the graveyard was the most haunting for the 2 plants. statue of grieving Ice P haunting. Two plants continued to wander the yard until they realized they would have to enter the house. Wolf grabbed Desmond's paw, hypered them into a hole that led into the attic. The smell of death was prevalent in the attic, even after 18 or more years. Wolf tried to ignore it and headed down the hallway. Desmond followed him behind, no surprise catching the two plants off guard, causing Desmond to shoot Wolf in the back of the head. Wolf glared at Desmond and went to slap the fire, but the look of terror in Desmond's face stopping Wolf from doing it. Two plants turned around, find a frightening sunflower holding a taser that was aimed at Desmond. Wolf looked at the sunflower and said, "Look, we aren't here to cause trouble. We're here looking for a Peacher named Pete Lathorus." Sunflower looked at the two plants that showed up out of nowhere and said, "Of course, I know exactly where he is. Follow me." Desmond let it step off after the sunflower, but Wolf grabbed him and whispered, "Behind the attic, this could be a trap." Desmond nodded and Wolf and went back up to the attic while Wolf followed the sunflower into a dark room, which is cool. Wolf could ask any question. A sharp, shocking pain ran through his body. Wolf collapsed on the floor. Shocks of electricity coursing through him every now and then. Out of nowhere, the lights in the room turned on with a sunflower with a maniacal look glared at Wolf and said, "Where's your fire pea friend?" Wolf glared back at Sunflower and said through pain, "Bite me." Sunflower was unimpressed. She used her taser as a club and beat the plasma pea in the head till he passed out. I ran after Bernard as he walked away from her. Determined look on her face. She called out again, "Bernard, please stop and let me talk." Bernard stopped, turned around and grabbed Allie before saying, "Leave me alone. I don't want to hurt you." I glared at Hot Rod Chomper and said angrily, "You can't hurt me anymore. You already did when you got mad at me." Bernard looked away from Allie and said, "Please leave me alone. I don't want to talk." "If you ain't talking money, I don't want to talk." Bernard felt like crying, but he couldn't. He never could. I approached Bernard cautiously and said softly, "Look, Bernard, please talk to me. I hate seeing you like this." Bernard growled louder as Allie got closer and yelled meaningfully, "Leave me alone! Can't you take a hint?" From behind us strode Hot Rod Chomper, a weak voice said, "Don't speak to her like that. She's only trying to help." Bernard turned around and said in an intimidating voice at the undead pea shooter, "You shouldn't have come back. You should have stayed away." Calamity smiled weakly at Bernard and said, "I don't want to fight. I just want to make sure Allie's alright." Bernard spat saliva at Calamity, who didn't see it coming and quickly sharpened and immobilized in prison. A Hot Rod Chomper's saliva. He jumped on Bernard and yelled, "Bernard, stop! Think about what you're gonna do!" Bernard growled and threw Allie off of herself before recoiling in shock and saying, "Allie, I'm sorry. Please forgive me." Allie looked at Bernard in shock, blood flowing from the corner of her face. She had gone when she hit the ground. I say, do I even know you anymore?" Bernard approached Allie slowly and walked his around his roots around her and said, "Yes, you do. I'm so sorry. I wasn't thinking. Just please forgive me." I looked up at the hulking Hot Rod Chomper and said quietly, "I want to, but I don't know if you will forgive me." I hugged her tight and said, "Of course I will forgive you." Hot Rod Chomper looked at the undead creature who was slowly walking away and said, "Calamity, take good care of Allie for me. I need to go." Bernard released Allie before burrowing into the ground, heading away from the sad-looking pea shooter. Well, it's been a long day back out on the street. Okay, I should be singing right now because my voice, my neck is very painful. I cannot talk. So, I hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you guys next time. Peace out.